Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And I have Jessica Hartsfield back today. And she was speaking briefly on this in the last meeting that we had. And we just had so much fun discussing this topic that we wanted to dive in a little bit deeper. So we're going to go over some more information about coexisting with change and how to stop allowing change to throw us off course. So Jessica does have a presentation today that she's going to share with us just to outline some of the really crucial points to help with the visualization. So I'm going to hand it over to her to start out with that presentation so we can learn a little bit more about coexisting with change. Hi,
Thank you very
Jessica.
much, Carmen. Hi. It's nice to be here again. I appreciate it.
Welcome. Thanks so much for coming back.
Yeah, of course. So let's just to give a little bit of background, I know I talked about some of this in the last session, but when we talk about the essential elements, just to remind everybody, what we're trying to do is really help people to find their rhythm. And when we talk about rhythm, we talk about actual rhythm of music and having a flow of things, right? Our vibrations, really, though, is what we're talking about with how we connect with the world and how we can make things a little bit easier for ourselves and not as hard. And really trying to balance our yin and yang energy within us so that we can use it to our advantage. And just for a quick reminder, these are the different essential elements that I spoke about last time. We have the stepping stones over here. We have understanding oneself, which is the next path, and then examining our world here, which is the third and final path that you go through to learn the essential elements. And to give a little bit of a definition of what they are, some people have asked me, like, are they therapy? Are they teachings? Are they, classes, whatever? Well, what they are is really a guided journey of exploration, a process for personal development. So it's just a way to give focus to that personal development and give a process so that you have steps to follow. Because sometimes we do better when we have a path to follow when we're trying to unravel ourselves, and there's a lot of different things to go through. And a lot of life lessons too, a lot of different types of information pulled from different experiments or different experiences of things that either I've had or people that I've talked to or just best practices out there. What they're not is express or fast lane psychotherapy. It's really not. It's meant to, if you're someone that thinks they might need therapy but aren't really sure yet, as you explore them, you may start to come to the understanding that you do need therapy. And that's really what that's for. It's not to be the therapy for you per se. And it's not a process to fix deep trauma. This is more, it's not that it's surface level, and we do uncover different pieces, possibly of our trauma through going through this that we've gone experienced in our lives. But again, it's really not here to fix that. It's here to inform you so that you have the ability to make those decisions and fix that in your own way with whatever type of help you might need. And it's not coaching either, because it's a little bit more in depth than that, where we go through and we actually give you some exercises to help to enforce the learnings in here, but not just really asking questions. We're giving you information as well. So with that, we can go into the first essential element of life, and this is the whole course of this one that I do. So we'll try to keep some things brief because it can go quite long, depending on conversations that we get into. But what we'll touch on in the different chapters here are talking about different theories of change, so we can understand what is change and how does it affect us. Our change relationship that understanding how we currently interact with change, and then how we want to interact with change, and then how to get in from one place to the other if they're different. We'll talk a little bit about change across the ages, how it's changed and affected different generations differently, and then handling life transitions. So we'll give you again some help and some exercise, trying to figure out three main things. One, again, is your relationship to change and what you want it to be. Two is to uncover your transitional blockades, and we'll talk more about what that means. But basically, the things that get in the way of you being able to make any changes in your life, even if you want to. And then putting together a change strategy so that you can get better with both of those two things above. Why do we have this as an essential element? Well, everybody deals with change. Doesn't matter who you are. Every being on this planet deals with change throughout their life cycle. So it's definitely something we should be talking about more. And this is why I put this class together. It opens up opportunities, things you may not have ever seen before, and gives you different ways of thinking about how to deal with change. Hopefully, it adds to your or lessen your stress. And that's really what it's meant to do because change can be very stressful. And we'll talk about why and how it is. And then also, it keeps us on track, helping us to be able to deal and weather the different changes that we come across. And we're talking about different types of changes, right? There's different levels of changes, which we'll get into. Um, it could be as, simple as you got a new job in a new city. Well, that's a different thing. You're changing your life, right? There's different things you need to understand there. Starting a business, taking care of a sick relative, etc. And so we'll talk about those different types of changes throughout, and see how the different theories and whatnot can still explain a lot of the things that we'll experience no matter what type of change we're going through. So what is change? Well, let's talk about the process of change first. What is it? What are we actually doing when we're experiencing change? And here we have a process of change. Again, this is not mine, but this is best practices that I've learned. And other people have come up with this, and I just thought it was something important for people to know. But I put my own little spin on it as well. So really, these are the different steps that we go through when a change happens. We have the external change, the thing that actually happens to us or that we choose. And as we experience that external change, we then start to work through it in our mind. We have these internal transitions and we start to think about, well, how do we feel about the change? Do we choose the change? Do I need to change myself in order to deal with this change? And do I like that or not, right? There's a lot of emotion in this part here because we're trying to figure out how are we going to experience this change? Are we going to fight it or are we going to flow with it or something in between? Once we get deeper into the change, then we experience culture shock. And, a lot of times we talk about culture shock as going to another country, which is a huge different change. But really, culture shock means just experiencing a different environment in general. And with that, we start to feel like the ground is kind of uneasy under our feet. We may feel a little like our head is spinning a little bit. Everything starts to feel foreign to us, even things that we might have been used to before. But as we start to then learn more about ourselves, learn more about the change, decide that we're going to move forward with the change, if we don't jump ship in culture shock, we start to make adjustments within ourselves, a little bit here, a little bit there, trying something new, absorbing a little bit of part of the change. And then as we start to make those adjustments, well, then we move to adaptation. And adaptation means we've then fully accepted that change and we're now living in that new environment. So that's the process that we go through. So you can probably understand why sometimes when things happen to us, we have these times of just pure panic or anxiety or even depression about what's happening to us. And that's a lot of times we might be stuck in that culture shock area. And so it's nice to be able to identify it because then we can start to be more kind to ourselves and say, okay, here's what we're experiencing. Let's figure out what we want to do here. So another piece that's important to go through or understand is William Bridges' theory of transitions. William Bridges was a change management specialist, and he worked a lot with organizations, but also wrote books for individuals that explain a lot about change and how to better absorb changes and experience them. I just love this theory because I think it helps to explain how many different things at one time are happening when we go through a change. And so with his theory, we have the external change that happens, and you can see we start experiencing all three of these levels of change at the very beginning. So we're ending and letting go, dealing with a neutral zone, and dealing with a new beginning all at the same time. Just a little bit less here, and you can see as we go through time, we shift focus. So the ending and letting go, that's where, again, even if you've experienced or chosen a change, you still have to let go of what was before. And that can bring a lot of emotions with it. And it's something where, you were doing one thing one day and then all of a sudden you're doing something different. And that can be scary. It's really hard to learn, especially the older you get. I think that's why they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, because it can get even more scary to try. Like for example, when I was younger, I used to go horseback riding and I'd ride bareback and I'd ride, all the different levels of, all the way up to canter, etc. And then I went horseback riding again when I was older and I was terrified and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even remember how to do this. I don't know what to do. And it was really hard. Like I even cried. I was so uncertain about it. And so just seeing that, sometimes changes are a little easier as we're younger because we're meant to learn as we're younger. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to absorb. We absorb it a little easier, because everything's constantly new to us because we haven't experienced that much in life. But once we get more set in our ways, it's harder to let go of that past. It's harder to let go of who we are right now and become something different with this new change. After we experience those emotions and we decide, okay, we're gonna let go, we're gonna take a chance on this change, we go through what's called the neutral zone. And this is just more chaos, because this is the swirl that we can get sucked into that, we don't know if we want to escape the change. We don't know if we want to actually do what we're planning. And everything can be up from down. And it gets a lot of people nervous about stuff. And this is where it kind of coincides with that culture shock place, right? So there you can see how some of the theories overlap in different ways, but they're explaining it from different perspectives so that different types of people can understand it and absorb it. Now with the neutral zone, a lot of people always think about the negative here, but the nice thing about the neutral zone is that you start to look at things differently and you have a lot of creativity during this time because you're not connected or hindered by how you used to be. You can kind of experience something new and break away and reinvent yourself in a way, or reinvent whatever it is you're working on in a way. So, there is always good that comes with the bad. Um, but that's really what's happening during the neutral zone. Now, as we start to gain our footing, we start to really look at the new beginning. And the new beginning, this is where we're making those adjustments and we're getting used to the new change. And we have the ability then to kind of step forward and leave the old change behind. Maybe not all of it. Maybe we bring some of it with us, depending on how we adjust. But we're stepping and we're into that new beginning. We're stepping into that new way of doing things. And then we start to get more confident about the change. We start to be a little happier about the change because we're more used to it. It feels more normal to us. And so the new beginning often has a lot of excitement around it. Now, I've done a lot of studying about Bridges' theory of transitions and the process of change. And I started to come up with my own way to explain some of this in more detail. Hold on one second. So I started to look at this from the position of being a leader, someone who's leading others through change. and what we need to do and be aware of when we're going through that change. And so it starts, you can see here, I have little bullets that explain the ending, letting go phase, the neutral zone, and the new beginning. So it's very similar, but I've dissected it out in different ways because when you have the change happen and you're a leader, it's very easy to lose people in the change, right? And not get something implemented or not get something to happen that might need to really happen. And so it's important that we understand to not only understand what's happening during the change, but to share the why of the vision of the change with people because people are experiencing the sadness of the ending. They might not understand why do we have to change? What part do I play in the next part of the change? They might have some resistance to changing themselves. And they might even have denial of the vision, but the denial of the vision could be confusion just because they don't know what the vision is, right? So as a leader, it's always important to share the vision, but also share the why of, the importance of why this is happening. And then we kind of just take this step by step. We have the desire for retraction, right? We might want to run away from the change, or we might have confusion of why to change. Like, again, why am I supposed to do this? What's going on here? And then, so you don't want to do what's happening just because it makes you feel uncomfortable. The last part of sharing the why, and be experiencing bargaining. Why don't we do this instead? Or why don't we just go back to the way it was before because this was better? But just have change vision where, they think they're going on, but again, now they're confused and they might go off. So you got to rein them back in and again, remind them of the why. And then I'll say, well, I don't know if I want to do this. So it's really important that the leader has a strong why to share with them, right? So not just changing for change's sake, but changing for a reason. Now, as you get into the middle section here, we also want to then move to confirming the what. So we want to give people really good instructions on what they need to do and what their part of the change is. Otherwise, you can have a lot of anger or some fighting against the change, threats to disavow the vision and try to escape the change again. Maybe they want to quit or whatever it is. But you also could have creativity that could be positive or negative. It could bring a benefit to your overall vision that you hadn't thought of before. But also negotiating the outcome of the change and saying, well, I'll do this if blah, blah, blah. Right. So you got to watch out for that if that's not something you want to budge on. Um, but as you give them more specifics of what to do, people normally will say, okay, I'm understanding it better. They might give in to the change. Um, if they have confusion of how to change, that's again what we need to come back and reassess for them. And then confirm a vision and outcomes promise so that they understand what they're supposed to be getting at the end anyway. And then also teaching the how, right? So when we get to this part, people are normally more calm about the change. They're usually more excited about the change, but sometimes they might still not understand how to do what they're supposed to do. So not only just telling them what to do, but explaining to them how to do it, best practices, for example. Maybe it's something that they can think of themselves, but you can give them guidance. We don't ever have to leave people without anything to start from, at least a template to start from. And so and then they start to recalculate what can stay, what must go. Um, they might gain resilience, and then they start to absorb the vision a little more. Then they're accepting the vision, they're leaving the neutral zone, and they're releasing the past for the last steps and moving into walking the new beginning. So again, just giving those theories something a little bit more specific for people, especially if you want to be the leader of the change. Now, I've expanded this a little bit just to say that Usually this first part, you share the why, you make it clear. If you're, good about sharing your vision, you make it visible. You've talked about it, you've explained it a couple times, and people are normally okay with that. But when it comes to the what and the how, again, they can get confused and they might want to start their body is used to doing one thing. Now they have to get used to doing another thing, even if it's just typing something different or going to a different building, for example. I don't know, just different things that can happen. So this is a cycle and it may repeat. You might have to continue to reinforce the what and the how as the leader. And so, clarity being given by the leader, start to share the details in the structured plan. Again, once you get to that what section, and there's strong certainty is needed from a change leader. You need to balance autocracy and democracy. And that can be the toughest part for a leader of change. You want to make sure that the change happens. So you want to be more strict with how it turns out, but you also want to give people the ability to contribute and be a part of the change as well. So you have to balance that consistently as you go through the cycle of change. I think that's it. That's all we have here. Oops, let me get out of here.
Awesome. And as far as change goes, it's definitely something that's a constant in everyone's life. So I think that the more people get familiar with these steps and kind of how to walk themselves through things, because, for example, the culture shock, right? A lot of times when people are in a state of change, they're in a real state of shock, which I think can really be a freeze mode for some people. And they
Hmm.
really don't know where to go from there. They have that moment of, what do I do? Well, maybe, like you said, I'll just go into my old habits because those are the things that they're used to and that feel good to them. So I really think that these steps, would you agree, are really important to help people kind of know what to do next, where they can go to find their way through the change, right?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And, just putting my project management hat on too, that's one of the reasons why, if possible, especially if it's a change that you choose, it's really good, again, to make sure that you have that vision made visible, written down, or put together a vision board or something like that, so that you know where you're going. So you have some place to go back to when you feel stuck or feel frozen or feel, like you can't do this anymore. And you can go back and reassess and say, is this vision still accurate? Is it still right for me? And also putting together some sort of a plan, it doesn't have to be super detailed, but again, having those to come back to when things don't make sense to you or you're just too emotional about it, it can really help to ground you.
Absolutely. And just a lot of really great concepts here. And I feel like you definitely did a great job of clarifying, giving us some really good visuals so that we're able to implement this in our lives because it's so important to all of us. We're all going through changes constantly. And we really appreciate you taking time today to break that down. And I really look forward to talking to you more about these concepts. I know you have so much more when it comes to the research you're doing. So I really would appreciate if you'd like to come back again and we could kind of go a little bit deeper into the layers of what you've been working on.
Definitely, I would love that. Thank you.
Great, great. Well, I'm excited to meet again. And for today, thank you all for joining us. And be sure to apply all of these excellent concepts to your daily life to make it better for you as you go through your life's changes.
Thank you very much, everybody.